an extraordinary philanthropist from Australia. I understand you have a message for Rupert Murdoch.
Well, yes, a couple of years ago, Rupert invited one of my colleagues, Chris DeRose, from Last Chance for Animals, to attend the Newscorp AGM. And Rupert also invited him to ask a question, and Rupert also promised to answer the question himself. And true to his word, and we must always give credit where it is due, Rupert did answer the question about the live animal export industry out of Australia. Now let's face it, this is not an industry, it's an atrocity. So Chris asked him a question about how he felt about the ethics of this grubby trade. And Rupert roundly and resoundingly condemned it. Full marks to him there too. Now, it wasn't very long after that, there was a dreadful experience of one of Rupert's companies in the United Kingdom infringing upon the privacy of a family under the most dreadful circumstances, where a young daughter was murdered and one of Rupert's newspapers bugged that particular voice recording when the little girl had already been killed. Now, Rupert said that that newspaper did not live up to his ethical standards, and he did something that no one expected. He shut the newspaper down. 100 years of newspaper history. Once again, full marks, full credit where it's due. So today, I would like to just remind Rupert that his wonderful mother, the late Dame Elizabeth Murdoch, also signed a document with me, which was published in many of the Australian newspapers, condemning this noxious live animal export trade. So he and his mum both rejected this dreadful industry. So today I call on Rupert again, and I do this so frequently, to tell every one of the editors of his newspapers in Australia to change their editorial policy and condemn this vile, cruel industry. It has no place in civilized society, and if these editors don't follow his instructions, they ought to be fired. And if his ethical standards are really as strong as I hope they are, and I suspect they are, if the newspapers don't change their policies, I invite him to shut them down, just like he did the News of the World. It's not much to ask. Civilization deserves better. And let's face it, journalists are the last artisans who sign their work. It is very important that when they sign an article or a report they've written, that it should not only be accurate, but it should be decent and ethical, and in some respects, uplifting. Because of the many things that we lack nowadays, decency and ethics in journalism is really important. And I hope Rupert will take this on board.
And one last thing, sir. You are a world-famous philanthropist and a business leader in Australia. You said that Rupert Murdoch said at a shareholders meeting that he himself was against the live export trade and that he felt it didn't match his ethical standards because obviously it involves the institutionalized torture of hundreds of thousands and over the years millions of animals. So why do you think that he's allowing his editors to endorse this cruel trade, the live export trade, in their influential newspapers when they're really his newspapers, and he has publicly stated that he's against live export of animals from Australia to the Middle East and elsewhere where they are tortured and butchered?
Yes, I think you're rather pushing an open door, and I happen to agree with you entirely. Our animals are sent on those ghastly death ships to the Middle East and Indonesia, where they have their eyes stabbed out and their tendons are slashed. Every penny I invested in the Basatine slaughterhouses in Cairo in Egypt was utterly wasted. The cruelty that exists there is just as egregious as ever. Now, Rupert did say, anticipating a question like the one you just asked, that we give him more credit than he deserves. In other words, he was saying that he doesn't exert that much editorial influence upon the newspapers further down the line. Now, I don't know how accurate that is, but I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Well, I would suggest that if he really is serious, all it takes is one group email saying, from now on, we want equal coverage about the animal rights issue on the live animal export trade. And I'm not just talking about sheep and cattle, but all other animals as well. For example, Australia is a significant exporter of goats, for example. And the export of animals to kangaroos as well to China.
Oh
So
my God.
this is a heaven-sent opportunity for Rupert to actually do some good for humanity in the time that he's got left on this earth. And I think the last accolade that Rupert could receive, that he hasn't received already, is if he can stop industries like this dead in their tracks, I would be the first to endorse his nomination for a Nobel Prize.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time. And I know that the good people of Australia and the amazing organization Animals Australia and your organizations are working so hard to end this horrific live export. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.